Chapter 454. The lively voices in the hall suddenly fell silent. Everyone's smiles were still hanging on their faces, but everyone turned to look at Qiu Yimeng and Yang Kai in amazement, their faces full of suspicion, as if wondering if they had misheard or if Qiu Yimeng had misspoken. The Qiu family's first young lady actually knows how to joke. Hua Xingxing suddenly laughed. Everyone in the hall was stunned for a moment and couldn't help laughing, none of them having thought that Qiu Yimeng would actually have such a side to her. However, this joke was really clumsy and there was no humor in it at all. Everyone was just afraid that Qiu Yimeng would be embarrassed, so they pretended to support her. Qiu Yimeng's expression was indifferent as her pair of beautiful eyes swept over the crowd. She didn't refute, nor did she have any intention of taking advantage of the situation, waiting for a long time before asking, "Is it funny?" A series of light coughs rang out. Everyone retracted their expressions and sat up straight. Perhaps you all think I am joking, but what I said is true. What I gave you is a mysterious grade low-rank mixed yuan pill. The pills are in your hands, open them and you will understand. Qiu Yimeng's tone was flat and direct, not at all joking. How is that possible? Hua Xing's face was filled with disbelief as he shook his head. I have also taken a mixed yuan pill. It was originally a heaven-grade top-rank pill. How could it suddenly become a mysterious grade pill? Mysterious grade and heaven grade, although there was only a 1-grade difference. However, the value of the two was very different. The pill below mysterious grade was just a pill, but a mysterious grade pill could already be called a mysterious grade pill. Every mysterious grade pill was not easy to refine. Not only did it require the necessary materials to refine the pill, but it also required a lot of time and effort from the alchemist. It had only been half a month since the arrival of the people from Medicine King's Valley. Everyone was well aware of the grade of that group of alchemists. The fact that this group of people could refine so many heaven-grade top-rank pills in such a short time was enough to make everyone admire them. However, Qiu Yimeng had told them otherwise. This was a mysterious grade mixed yuan pill, so naturally no one believed it. Not to mention that it was impossible for those people to refine enough profound level pills to be distributed to everyone in such a short period of time, let alone the Hunyuan Dan. It was impossible for a black grade one to appear. As Hua Xingxing spoke, he opened a pill bottle and casually poured out a pill. His frivolous expression suddenly changed as he stared at the pill in his hand in astonishment. The others did the same. The moment the pills were poured out, cries of surprise and confusion rang out. None of you have a low status in your respective sects, so you must have taken a mixed yuan pill before. Naturally, all of you are knowledgeable. Take a look for yourselves. Qiu Yimeng smiled slightly. He didn't say anything else. Speaking of which, when she saw this batch of Hunyuan Dan in the morning, her reaction was the same as that of Hua Stars. She thought that Yang Kai was joking with her, but when she verified it with her own eyes, Qiu Yimeng had to admit that this was indeed a batch of mysterious grade low-rank mixed yuan pills. How could this be? Hua Stars was dumbfounded. A black-level Hunyuan Dan was equivalent to breaking the norm. Shocked, the Hua family young master quickly poured out all the pills and checked them one by one. He quickly discovered that this was indeed a batch of mysterious grade pills. How could this be? Hua Stars was confused and for a moment, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Look, this mysterious grade pill actually has lines like the human body's meridians. An exclamation sounded, as if someone had discovered a new world. Pill veins. Heavens, I also have a few mysterious grade pills with pill veins. I have one too, 4 of them. I've only heard of pills with pill veins in rumors. I never expected to see one with my own eyes this time. Furthermore, this was not just 1 or 2 profound level medicinal pills that had formed elixir veins, but a total of 20 to 30% of the medicinal pills had formed elixir veins. Everyone was shocked, their expressions changing, but most of them were filled with excitement. Pill veins. When an alchemist refined a pill, if they had a high enough level of skill, they could cause a pill to form lines similar to the human body's meridians. This was called pill veins. Once something like pill veins appeared on a pill, its value would immediately multiply by several folds. Because of the pill veins, this kind of pill could display a much better effect than ordinary pills. Moreover, no matter how long it was stored, the pill veins would not lose its medicinal properties. As time passed, the pill veins could even actively absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, nourishing the pill's spirituality and making its medicinal properties stronger. Above the pill veins, there was also something called pill cloud. It was like a dreamy cloud covering the pill. Its effect was even more powerful than pill veins. These were all just legends. Although the status of the people present was not low, it was rare to see a pill with pill veins. It was not that their sects did not have the money to buy it, but this kind of thing could not be refined by ordinary alchemists. Many alchemists who were obsessed with refining pills could only occasionally refine a pill with pill veins under coincidental circumstances. The higher the grade of the pill, the lower the chances of pill veins appearing. Pill veins were the symbol of a top alchemist, the symbol of a top-grade pill. But now, at least 20% of the mysterious grade pills in everyone's hands had pill veins. This ratio was really a bit scary. These pills with pill markings were more exciting than any other treasure. Everyone was whispering to each other excitedly. Tianyuan City's young city lord Lu Feixing was even more excited, holding 2 bottles of mysterious grade pills in his hands, his face flushed red and his breathing hot. In his heart, he was secretly thinking that joining this young Lord Kai was the best decision he had ever made. The war hadn't even started yet each family had already received 2 bottles of mysterious grade pills. There was still a long way to go, so what was there to be afraid of? Even the 4 girls from 10,000 Flower Palace were somewhat excited at this moment. Han Shaoqi's temperament was slightly better, and although she was excited, she still maintained the demeanor of a senior sister, but her beautiful eyes were filled with a strange light as she kept glancing towards Yang Kai. Her face was filled with gratitude. As for the lively Yi Han, she had already begun inspecting the pills one by one. Every time she saw a mysterious grade pill with pill veins, she would shout loudly, causing the other senior sisters to glare at her, secretly warning her not to be so rude. Senior Qin is really amazing, Medicine King's Valley is really amazing. After a while, Chu Jingshan of Soaring Feather Pavilion praised. Senior Qin already has such means, I'm afraid he will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Grandmaster Xiao in the future. Feng Qianhen of Watermoon Hall smiled. A beautiful smile appeared on her face. Huaxing's brow furrowed as he pinched a mysterious grade pill in his hand and stared straight at Yang Kai. He was different from those who came from first-class forces. Although Huaxing was a playboy, the things he came into contact with were undoubtedly better than them. The Hua family also had mysterious grade alchemists, more than one, but as far as Huaxing knew, even if all of them worked together, it was impossible for them to refine so many mysterious grade pills in such a short time. Even if they were given another 10 years, they wouldn't be able to refine so many pills with pill veins. Even if Qin Zhe was the young valley master of Medicine King's Valley, he was still just a mysterious grade low-rank alchemist. He shouldn't have such great ability, right? Qiu Yimeng's eyes swept over the 2 young men and women from super families, both of them seeing the doubt in each other's eyes. This whole situation was strange. After obtaining a share of the mysterious grade pills, naturally they would need to cultivate quickly. With the help of these pills, if they wanted to improve their strength, they would need to accumulate enough time. Everyone said their goodbyes and returned to their own courtyards to cultivate. Even Huaxing couldn't wait to go back and try out the effects of these mysterious grade pills. After everyone else had left, Qiu Yimeng looked at Yang Kai with a smile and said, "Shouldn't you tell me? Who was the one who refined this batch of pills?" "Don't ask, I'll tell you when I need to." Yang Kai shook his head lightly. This matter was related to his little senior sister, so Yang Kai wouldn't tell anyone. Moreover, except for the people of Medicine King's Valley and Yang Kai himself, no one else was allowed to enter the pill room. Even Qiu Yimeng didn't dare to rashly enter the pill room and disturb the disciples of Medicine King's Valley, so she really didn't know the origin of this batch of pills. Rolling her eyes, Qiu Yimeng snorted and said, "Even if you don't tell me, I'll know. Is it because of your little senior sister that you refined this batch of pills?" The Chiu family's first young lady's mind was quite sharp, and she had judged that Qin Zhe didn't have such great ability. Besides Yang Kai and the disciples of Medicine King's Valley, only Xia Ningchang could enter and leave the pill room, so naturally she was able to infer some clues. "Don't speak nonsense, be careful or I'll silence you." Yang Kai glanced at her, full of warning. Qiu Yimeng's beautiful face paled slightly as a trace of astonishment appeared on her face. Just now, she had only said those words casually, but according to Yang Kai's reaction, this batch of pills really had something to do with his little senior sister. Not even bothering to argue with Yang Kai, Qiu Yimeng's expression became dignified. Only now did she realize that Xia Ningchang wasn't just a woman Yang Kai liked. However, besides the fact that this woman wore a veil, there wasn't anything special about her. On the other hand, her strength was quite strong, at least at the Immortal Ascension boundary first stage. Could it be that this batch of pills was refined by her? Shaking her head with a wry smile, Qiu Yimeng discarded this ridiculous idea. By the time she regained her composure, Yang Kai had already disappeared. She didn't know when he had left. "Sooner or later, I'll dig up all your secrets." Qiu Yimeng snorted, secretly vowing to herself. The various mysteries surrounding Yang Kai made her very curious. Now, even the woman around him had become mysterious, which naturally aroused Qiu Yimeng's curiosity. Yang Kai walked over to the door of his little senior sister's room. During this time, Xia Ningchang had been busy performing alchemy and hadn't had time to rest until today. The two of them hadn't had a good chat for a long time. The door was open, so when he walked up to it, Yang Kai's expression became strange. Not only was Xia Ningchang in the room, but Lan Chudai was also there. The two women seemed to be chatting, both of them smiling. After seeing Yang Kai, the two women's eyes turned towards him. "Two senior sisters, you seem to be in a good mood." "What are you talking about?" Yang Kai didn't act polite and walked straight in. Xia Ningchang and Lan Chudai glanced at each other and both chuckled. "Women's matters, we won't talk about them with you." Lan Chudai glared at Yang Kai. "We're not outsiders, why don't you tell us?" Yang Kai chuckled. Hearing him say this, Lan Chudai's eyes suddenly lit up and she secretly rejoiced. Chapter 455. While Yang Kai was talking, he went to Xia Ningchang and pulled her up. While the senior sister was screaming, he put her on his lap and looked at Lan Chudai, waiting for her answer. "Junior brother?" Xia Ningchang was embarrassed and uneasy, but her body was held by Yang Kai. She couldn't get rid of him. In an instant, her face turned red, and her dense eyelashes trembled. She no longer dared to look at the others and buried her head in her chest. "What are you afraid of? I said that we are not outsiders, so you don't have to mind." Yang Kai laughed, looking like a rogue. Lan Chudai's happy expression slowly faded, and she squeezed out a smile and said, "I won't disturb you." After saying that, she got up and left. Xia Ningchang was about to say something, but Yang Kai quietly scratched her. Suddenly, the senior sister's body tensed up, and she didn't dare to move. Yang Kai scratched her flat stomach, which was a very sensitive place. The reason why he did this in front of Lan Chudai was because he wanted her to leave. Time was precious, and he wanted to spend more time with his senior sister. How could he allow others to disturb him? After Lan Chudai left, Yang Kai waved his hand, and a gentle wind pushed out, closing the door. Outside the room, Lan Chudai's smile was stiff, and her face was bitter. How could she not see Yang Kai's intention? It was because she saw it that she felt a little uncomfortable. Speaking of which, she and Xia Ningchang were both Yang Kai's senior sister. They had passed the stage of not knowing each other, and not being familiar with each other. However, the weight of her and Xia Ningchang in Yang Kai's heart was completely different. On the road of life, often an inadvertent choice can change a lot of things. Slightly shaking her head, Lan Chudai tightened her clothes and suddenly discovered. It was just the beginning of autumn, but it was a little cold. Listening attentively, he noticed that Lan Chudai was already far away. Xia Ningchang's voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzzing as she whispered, "Shitty, put me down." "Is this not good?" Yang Kai looked into her eyes with a smile. "Oh." Xianing Chang responded softly, her cheeks burning. You like me? Yang Kai smiled evilly. The questions he asked were also extremely tricky and vicious. Xianing Chang didn't dare to answer. He didn't make a sound, but his heart was beating violently in his chest. That means you don't like it? Yang Kai pretended to be disappointed and sighed for a while. That's not it. The little senior sister immediately panicked and waved her hand. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. Yang Kai couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sitting next door, Treasurer Meng couldn't help rolling his eyes, a fire burning in his chest. He couldn't wait to rush up to Yang Kai and beat him so badly that even his mother wouldn't recognize him. Too vile, too shameful. He actually dared to bully his docile, quiet, and cute baby disciple. Too shameless. This old man is so angry. Junior brother, are you kidding me? Xianing Chang asked softly. Her cheeks under the veil were clearly bulging. Staring at Xianing Chang, Yang Kai's eyes softened. It was as if all the tiredness and hard work of this period had been dispelled. The little senior sister felt uncomfortable again, but she didn't have time to criticize him. She changed the topic and said, Junior brother, you don't like senior sister Lan. Yang Kai frowned and thought for a moment before saying, It's not that I don't like her, it's just that I try to avoid contact with her as much as possible. But I see that senior sister Lan seems to care about you. When she came to find me, she talked a lot about you. It's because of that. Yang Kai smiled. Let's put it this way. If I wasn't a member of the Yang family and was still the former High Heaven Pavilion disciple, would little senior sister change her attitude towards me? No matter what you are, you will always be my junior brother. I know you won't, but others will. Our senior sister Lan is like this. Right now, she cares about me mostly because of my identity. If one day I'm not a member of the Yang family, perhaps she will change her opinion. Of course, this is just my personal opinion, so I can't say for sure. However, I still feel that I should avoid contact with her as much as possible. I can't say that she's wrong, but I can say that little senior sister is too kind. There's no way to compare people. Yang Kai shook his head and explained. Xianing Chang looked at him, but didn't quite understand. However, Yang Kai knew that in her heart, although little senior sister was delicate and naive, she wasn't ignorant of worldly affairs. She was kind-hearted and wouldn't think too much of others. Right, where are my pills? Yang Kai asked. They're on the bed, I'll give them to you. Little senior sister jumped down from Yang Kai's lap, then walked to the bed and took out a bundle, placing it in front of Yang Kai. Opening the bundle, 6 bottles of pills appeared in front of Yang Kai's eyes. 3 bottles are for you to cultivate your Yuan Qi, all Yang attribute pills. The other 3 are for you to cultivate your spiritual energy, Xianing Chang said with some regret. Time was too tight, so I could only refine these. That's enough. Yang Kai was very satisfied. These pills were all black grade low grade. Like the chaotic Yuan pill, these pills should have been heaven grade top rank, but after being refined by Xianing Chang, they had all been upgraded to black grade. Not only could the myriad drug liquid cleanse one's body, but if a drop was added to the pill refining process, it could also improve the quality of the pill. Coupled with the spirit array obtained from the true alchemic way, Xianing Chang could easily refine these pills. If it weren't for the myriad drug liquid and the spirit array, with Xianing Chang's current level, it would have been impossible for her to achieve this in just half a month. Yang Kai also didn't have so many black grade materials for her to use. Don't tire yourself out. Yang Kai looked at her with some distress. I'm not tired. During this period of alchemy, my strength has been steadily improving and I'm about to reach the Immortal Ascension Boundary 2nd stage. I only hope that I can refine a lot of pills so that I can grow up faster. Then I can help you and master in the future. Xianing Chang said in a cheerful voice. Alchemy is cultivation. The sacred spirit medicine body is really special. Yang Kai secretly sighed. After chatting with Xianing Chang for a while, Yang Kai began to cultivate. As usual, Yang Kai first absorbed the medicinal efficacies of the 3 bottles of Yang attribute pills and transformed them into Yang liquid to quench his Yuan Qi. Next, he used the 3 bottles of mysterious grade pills to explore the mysteries of the true alchemic way. Treasurer Meng had taught him a special spiritual energy cultivation method, which had been in effect during this period of time. With the help of this method, Yang Kai felt that the recovery of his spiritual energy was indeed much faster than before. While Yang Kai cultivated, Xia Ningqiang sat quietly to the side, restoring her strength or sleeping on the bed. Such a scene reminded Yang Kai of the cave mansion under the coiling dragon stream, and he couldn't help but reminisce. 2 days later, Xia Ningqiang once again went to the pill room to perform alchemy, causing Yang Kai to suddenly feel lonely. But as time passed, Yang Kai could clearly feel that his strength was improving step by step, and he was only a step away from breaking through to the Yuan Qi 9th stage. With the immortal ascension boundary on the horizon, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling a little excited. As long as he reached the immortal ascension boundary, he would no longer need to worry about the monitoring of the 8 above immortal ascension boundary masters in War City. In the dawn before darkness, all was quiet as Yang Kai tried to pry into the mysteries of the true alchemic way. Suddenly, a sense of disharmony washed over him, causing him to open his eyes and furrow his brow to furrow, sending out his divine sense like a tidal wave. At the same time, Yang Kai clearly felt that from Meng Wuya's room next door, there was also a faint divine sense. Compared to his own, Meng Wuya's divine sense could almost be described as imperceptible, but it was still undeniably powerful. The 2 divine senses wandered around the entire mansion. In just an instant, they locked onto a corner at the same time. Courting death. Yang Kai coldly snorted, condensing all of his divine sense into a single point and releasing a mysterious soul skill. In the darkness of the night, a purple light flashed, and accompanied by a cry of surprise, a thin and blurry figure suddenly appeared. "Who is it?" The master in charge of standing guard immediately noticed, and his voice spread throughout Yang Kai's mansion. In the next moment, their clothes fluttered in the wind as countless figures dashed over. The thin and blurry figure showed a look of horror and disbelief, as if he had never expected that he would be discovered. Not daring to hesitate, circles of ripple-like patterns suddenly appeared on his body. As the ripples spread out, his entire figure gradually blurred. Just as his figure was about to disappear, a ghostly figure took the lead to approach him. 2 daggers that flickered with cold light danced in the air within a radius of a few feet around him, killing him instantly. Ingjiu! With a muffled groan, the man's body burst into pieces. Ingjiu narrowed his eyes and quickly retreated, but when he looked again, there was no trace of the intruder, only a cloud of mist spreading out in all directions. About 1,000 meters away, there was a streak of light that was rapidly escaping, as fast as lightning. Ingjiu couldn't help showing a look of horror. This speed, *schwa schwa schwa, countless figures landed on the ground as Yang Kai strode over, staring at the bloodstains on the ground before glancing in the direction the intruder had fled, and couldn't help coldly snorting. "What's all this ruckus about?" The door to the pill room suddenly opened and Qin Zhe rushed out with a displeased expression, but when he saw Yang Kai here, he quickly restrained himself and frowned. He also noticed that something was wrong. Someone sneaked in. Did anything happen to the disciples of Medicine King's Valley? Yang Kai quickly asked. No. Qin Zhe shook his head. Yang Kai released his divine sense and couldn't help feeling relieved. There were no casualties among the disciples of Medicine King's Valley, and Xia Ningqiang was also safe. But the pill room was the most heavily guarded location in the entire mansion, yet it was still infiltrated to this extent. Yang Kai's expression couldn't help becoming cold. This was a slap to his face. Check and see if there are any casualties in the mansion. Yang Kai's face was like the night before a storm, making everyone's heart palpitate. Chapter 456. The people who had rushed over quickly scattered, and after a while, all returned and reported the situation to Qiu Yimeng. No losses. Qiu Yimeng's expression was somewhat ugly. Although the news of no losses was very gratifying, how that person had managed to sneak in was still a cause for concern. The possibility of a mole wasn't ruled out, but this possibility was very low. At least, From the look on Yang Kai's face, he didn't seem to suspect that someone was behind this. In other words, that person had just snuck into the pill room with his own ability. Considering all this, Qiu Yimeng's expression changed slightly. Yang Kai's mansion was now filled with many masters, many of whom were Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage masters. The pill room's security was of the utmost importance, yet that master had still almost succeeded. Just how strong was that person? But since he had already successfully infiltrated, why was his trail discovered by others? Qiu Yimeng couldn't understand. "Ing Jiu, did you see what that person looked like?" Yang Kai frowned and asked. From the darkness, Ing Jiu's voice called out, "No, I don't even know if he was a man or a woman, or what his cultivation was." Everyone couldn't help feeling horrified. When it came to concealment and assassination, Ing Jiu was an expert among experts. Even after exchanging a single blow with this person, he hadn't been able to learn anything. This person was really mysterious. However, in my opinion, this person's true cultivation shouldn't be very high. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to not be able to withstand my shadow dancing strike. Ing Jiu speculated. Although that person had successfully escaped, he had still been injured. The blood on the ground was obviously from him. Yang Kai gently nodded, pondering for a moment before saying, "Then he either used the power of an artifact or cultivated a special secret art. Interesting, who was it that recruited such a master?" This time, if he and Treasurer Meng hadn't been vigilant at the same time, perhaps that person really would have succeeded. His purpose for sneaking into the pill room was obvious. He definitely wanted to harm the alchemists from Medicine King's Valley. These people from Medicine King's Valley. If something really happened to them in Yang Kai's mansion, it would be a big problem. "Junior brother Yang, there's nothing else. I'll go back first to perform alchemy." Qin Zhe's expression was calm, as if he didn't have the slightest bit of joy after nearly falling into a desperate situation. "Yes." Yang Kai nodded slightly. After Qin Zhe left, Yang Kai coldly shouted, "Xiao Shun. Subordinate is here." An Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage master stepped out from the crowd and shouted, "Subordinate is here." The Yang family blood warrior was the one who had taken the initiative to join Yang Kai after his 8th brother Yang Quan had been eliminated. Under Yang Kai's care, he was fully healed in just 1 or 2 days. "From now on, you will stay in the pill chamber." Xiao Shun sneered, "Little Gongzi, don't worry as long as I, Xiao Shun, am alive. No one can get close to the alchemy room." Yang Kai gently nodded. His eyes were deep as he looked in the direction that the mysterious master had fled. He couldn't help but sneer. It seems that this group of people from the Medicine King's Valley still made his brothers wary. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent people to deal with the people from the Medicine King's Valley. However, who was this person's subordinate? Wasn't he a little too bold? In the east, a ray of light shone, indicating that it was almost dawn. With such a thing happening, no matter who it was, they couldn't feel at ease. Qiu Yimeng immediately redeployed the entire mansion's defenses and began busying herself. Yang Kai stood in place. Looking at the bloodstain on the ground and recalling the scene he had just witnessed with his divine sense, Yang Kai couldn't help shaking his head. He hadn't been able to see what cultivation this person had, nor could he tell whether they were a man or a woman. The secret art or artifact this mysterious master had relied on was really quite mysterious. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. Yang Kai turned his head and saw a cultivator from the Qiu family's autumn rain hall hurrying over. Arriving in front of Yang Kai, he cupped his fists and said, "Young Lord Kai, someone from the Yang family has arrived." "Someone from the Yang family?" Yang Kai's expression became solemn. "They have arrived at the main hall and are holding a Yang family elder's order, requesting young Lord Kai's presence." "NIC." Waving the man away, Yang Kai frowned for a moment before suddenly calling out, "Everyone, prepare yourselves, there's probably something we need to do today." There's finally movement. After all these days, all I've done is cultivate, I've been bored to death. Yang Kai, this time, no matter what you're going to do, you have to take us with you." A group of young men and women were all rubbing their hands together in excitement, as if they wanted to see the world burn. We'll talk about it later, I don't know the details yet, in any case, everyone should prepare yourselves first. Yang Kai smiled lightly, turned around, and walked towards the main hall. Qiu Yimeng hurried to catch up and asked suspiciously, "How did you know there would be movement?" Yang Kai chuckled. "If I'm not mistaken, the family should want to accelerate the progress of the inheritance war. Since my 8th brother was eliminated, the remaining 6 of us have been biding our time to develop ourselves. It's been almost a month since then, so it's not good for us to continue like this. Do you think your young family will order you to take the initiative? It won't be such a cheap method, there must be some other way." Yang Kai frowned. He was also guessing what the family would do, but he didn't know, he could only wait until he saw the person who came. As they spoke, they arrived at the main hall. Inside the hall, a man stood with his hands crossed behind his back, waiting. Glancing around, Yang Kai was stunned and quickly stepped forward to greet him. "Father." 4th Master Yang turned around and seeing his son stride over, he couldn't help smiling and nodding gently. Qiu Yimeng also performed quite well, gracefully bowing and saying, "Qiu family's Qiu Yimeng greets 4th Master Yang." Yang Yingfeng glanced at Qiu Yimeng meaningfully and smiled. "Young lady Qiu, you're too polite. You've assisted Kai, so we're family." After a pause, he continued, "You've suffered under Kai. Uncle is too polite. Helping Yang Kai was niece's own initiative, I didn't suffer." Yang Yingfeng smiled happily. "Kai is still young. If he has offended you in any way, I hope eldest niece will forgive him. If you've suffered any grievances here, just tell me and I'll sort them out." "Many thanks, Uncle." Qiu Yimeng smiled sweetly. "Then I'll have to trouble Uncle to support niece in the future." Saying so, Qiu Yimeng's beautiful eyes flashed as she glared at Yang Kai. It was clear that if he dared to bully her again, she would complain. Yang Kai listened to the old man and young woman inadvertently change the way they addressed each other and his face couldn't help turning black. Quickly changing the subject, he asked, "Father, why are you here?" "Pass down the family's orders." Speaking of business, Yang Yingfeng's expression became serious as he raised the Yang family elder token in his hand and quickly said, 2 hours later, 50 kilometers east of War City, near Pijing Lake, a batch of artifacts will appear. Those who intend to seize them should head there quickly." Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he listened, and Qiu Yimeng's beautiful eyes also flashed. The most fundamental foundation of a cultivator's strength was their own cultivation. But in addition to this, they could also rely on external forces. There were only 3 kinds of external forces. The first was pills, the second was artifacts, and the third was secret arts that could enhance one's combat effectiveness. Yang Kai didn't need to worry too much about pills. With Xia Ningchang and the group from Medicine King's Valley, Yang Kai had the advantage over anyone else. Secret arts could only be discovered, not sought, so what Yang Kai cared about right now was artifacts. If a cultivator had a high-grade artifact, they could also enhance their combat effectiveness. In comparison, the improvement brought by artifacts was much more direct. It was much more effective and simpler. This was the current weakness of Yang Kai's mansion. Right now, all of the artifacts used by the cultivators of the various great forces in the mansion were brought by themselves. Each of them had at most 1 or 2 of these artifacts. If they could obtain more artifacts, the strength of the mansion would directly rise to a whole new level. Yang Kai and Qiu Yimeng glanced at each other and saw the interest in each other's hearts. "I've already conveyed the order. Whether you go or not is up to you young people to decide." Yang Yingfeng smiled slightly. "Why wouldn't we go?" Yang Kai raised his brow. "Are these artifacts contributed by your family?" Not only the Yang family, but the central capital's 8 great families also contributed, but our Yang family contributed the majority, while the other 7 families only contributed as a courtesy. "How many?" "A full 1,000. Yang Yingfeng raised one finger. Even though Yang Kai and Qiu Yimeng's status wasn't low and their knowledge wasn't shallow, they still couldn't help feeling a little anxious. 1,000 artifacts. Currently, there were at most 300 people gathered in the mansion. If they could obtain all of these artifacts, It would be equivalent to each person receiving 3 or 4 artifacts, but this was definitely an unrealistic idea. 80% of them are Earth-grade artifacts, and the remaining 20% are mostly Heaven-grade. There are even a few mysterious grade artifacts. Then all the more reason to snatch them all. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. The role of mysterious grade artifacts was simply too great. If one didn't try to snatch them, it would only benefit others. However, to be able to offer up 1,000 artifacts at once, the heritage of the central capital's 8 great families was truly extraordinary. Although most of these artifacts weren't high grade, the number was still frightening. "Uncle, is there any other useful information?" Qiu Yimeng asked with a smile, apparently wanting to inquire about more information to gain the upper hand. For example, how would this batch of artifacts appear, and where exactly would they appear? If this information could be obtained, it would be of great use. No need to ask, since the family allowed my father to convey the order to me, obviously they will only tell him what he can reveal. Yang Kai waved his hand. Yang Yingfeng glanced over at his son and nodded. What I know is all harmless information. The same goes for everyone else. You young people are all the same. How much you can obtain in the end will depend on your own methods. I was just asking casually. Qiu Yimeng didn't mind, pretending to be well-behaved in front of Yang Yingfeng for some unknown reason. Since that's the case, it's time to prepare. Yang Kai's face filled with a touch of elegance, a fire burning in his eyes as he grinned meaningfully. "Father, if you have nothing else to do, you can stay here for a few more days." Yang Kai suddenly turned to Yang Yingfeng. Fourth Master Yang shook his head. "Your mother is worried about you. I have to go back and report to her about your situation." "Then, Father, you can do as you please." Chapter 457. The news that 1,000 artifacts were about to appear soon spread throughout War City, causing an uproar. The 6 young lords all acted quickly, preparing to set out. Some busybodies even rushed to Pijing Lake 50 kilometers away, ready to watch the fun. In Yang Kai's mansion, Yang Kai rubbed his forehead as he looked at the group of noisy allies in front of him. Except for the 5 immortal ascension boundary masters from the Duan Mu family who remained silent, the others all expressed their desire for Yang Kai to take their people to participate in the battle. Even if the 5 immortal ascension boundary masters from the Duan Mu family didn't speak, each of them had a burning fighting spirit in their eyes. For a time, all of them were arguing endlessly, creating a lively mess. Qiu Yimeng didn't know what to do. Most of these people were Yang Kai's friends, unlike the other young lords. Those who went to help were the subordinates of those young lords and couldn't be casually ordered to do so. "I don't care in any case, this young lord must go this time. Damn it, how can such a big thing happen without my stars?" The Hua family young lord said with an attitude of, "If you don't take me, I'll go by myself." Qiu Yimeng opened her mouth. She also wanted to go, but now Yang Kai was in a difficult position. As the second in command of the mansion, naturally she couldn't use her position for personal gain, so she could only wait for Yang Kai to speak. Looking at these enthusiastic allies, Yang Kai couldn't help smiling wryly. They didn't want to go because they were bored, nor because they were tempted by the 1,000 artifacts, but because Yang Kai had been providing them with pills for cultivation all this time, but they hadn't contributed at all. All of them felt a little apologetic, and now they finally had an opportunity to contribute. Who would be willing to give up? "Let's draw lots." Yang Kai made the final decision, letting them continue arguing here without any results, so he decided to use the simplest method. The noise suddenly subsided, and everyone turned to look at Yang Kai. None of them had expected him to use such a childish method to decide this matter. However, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with it. "That's good, who goes and who stays, it's up to heaven." Han Shaoqi smiled and was the first to agree. "Then let's draw lots." Fatty Dong also nodded. "I have no objections." Hua Stars chuckled. To show fairness, Yang Kai personally arranged it. Soon the results were out. Of the 11 supporting families, the Hua clan, the Duanmu clan, the Dong clan, and the 10,000 Flower Palace were among them. The Reflecting Moon sect and Tianyuan City followed Yang Kai, while the rest stayed behind to guard the mansion. Just in case. Do you have any objections? Yang Kai looked around. Good, I'll stay and look after the house. Qiu Yimeng smiled. Then let's go. Yang Kai's expression was cold as he waved his hand. He led the way, and the other 6 forces hurriedly followed. Of these 6 forces, with the exception of the Hua family who only had 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Masters, each of the other forces had at least 5 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, including 4 Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th Stage Masters. The remaining levels were unevenly distributed, but none of them were too weak. In total, there were nearly 30 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters and more than 100 Yuan Qi cultivators, making for a spectacular scene. About a kilometer away from Yang Kai's mansion, there was an inn. At this moment, in the lobby of the inn, a man and 2 women were eating. All 3 of them were very young, and one of them was even a pair of twins. The twins were wearing light blue dresses. They were elegant and refined, and their appearances were enchanting and charming. Their waists were graceful, their breasts were tall and straight, and their skin was white. As they sat there, they attracted the attention of passers-by and guests in the inn. They were greatly moved. Beautiful women were rare, and beautiful twins were even rarer. Of the twin sisters, one had a helpless expression on her face while the other looked indifferent, but there was still a hint of dissatisfaction and resentment between her eyebrows. As for the man, he smiled bitterly again and again. While sighing and drinking his wine, he said, I say, big sister, we've been here for more than a month. Do you want to go in or not? One of the sisters also nodded. That's right, big sister, we can't always live in this inn. Since we're here, why don't we go find him? Why would we want to find him? The other person angrily said, we're not looking for him, we just came out to have fun, I know. The man continued, it's just that War City is in chaos now, and you 2 sisters are living here, showing your face in public will sooner or later attract attention. Haven't you noticed that there have been more people observing you these past few days? We still won't go. The charming woman coldly snorted, if you want to go, you can go by yourselves, I'll just hide in my room and not come out. The man shook his head slightly, isn't he just hiding his true identity? Besides, this isn't his original intention. The Yang family's young lords don't talk about these things when they're outside, why do you care so much? The woman pouted her dark red lips, unable to say anything. Just as they were talking, a large group of people suddenly rushed out of Yang Kai's house, led by Yang Kai. This group of more than 100 people rose into the air and flew off towards the east. Looking at the figure of this man, the beautiful eyes of the 2 women lit up slightly before immediately dimming. There's movement. The man's expression became solemn. Yang Kai suddenly bringing so many people out obviously meant that he had something important to do. Turning to the 2 sisters, he quickly said, I'm going to follow them, do you want to come with me? Big sister, I want to go. One of them quickly said, you what? If you don't follow them it'll be too late, let's go. The man didn't give them a chance to explain and quickly rushed out. The 2 sisters glanced at each other and no longer hesitated, quickly following. Just as they left War City, a group of people appeared from Yang Kai's flank. The 2 sides glanced at each other and suddenly became tense. It was Yang Zhao's people. Although a month ago, Yang Kai's forces had surpassed Yang Kai's for a short period of time, as time passed, Yang Zhao had gathered more and more support, so this time, the number of people he had brought with him was no less than Yang Kai's, and many of them were even more powerful. The distance between the 2 sides was less than 300 meters and they advanced side by side. No one was willing to be left behind. 9th brother, good movement skills, Yang Zhao suddenly chuckled, no wonder 3rd brother was snatched away by you. 2nd brother is too polite. Yang Kai also smiled slightly. This time, 2nd brother won't let you win. Anytime, if 2nd brother wants to fight, 9th brother can play with you right now. The smile on Yang Zhao's face stiffened slightly. Yang Kai's aggressive momentum made him a little uncomfortable, but after a moment of silence, he shook his head and said, let's get down to business first. There will be plenty of opportunities. And Yang Kai didn't continue to provoke him. While the 2 brothers were talking, Suddenly, a gust of wind blew from behind and a figure leapt past the crowd, dashing forward like a bolt of lightning. Whether it was Yang Kai or Yang Zhao, both of them couldn't help narrowing their eyes as they stared at this man's back. Lu Qingyao! Huastars exclaimed, grinding his teeth, that bastard is too arrogant. His voice was filled with anger. However, he was also somewhat helpless. There was no way he could compare with Huastars. Lu Qingyao was indeed better. However, he had directly leapt over the heads of the two groups of people, flying away without even glancing back, obviously confident in his ability. Not putting anyone in his eyes at all. Hearing Huastar's exclamation, Yang Kai's eyes couldn't help lighting up. He had only ever heard of Lu Qingyao's name, but had never seen him in person. After the inheritance war began, Yang Kai also knew that Lu Qingyao had been observing the situation in War City and hadn't pledged allegiance to any of the Yang family young lords. He also hadn't made any trouble for any of the Yang family young lords. Obviously, in his opinion, no one was worthy of him working for. It turned out that this person was Lu Qingyao. Sure enough, he had the capital to be proud of himself. Yang Zhao couldn't help snorting, "Ninth brother, this is my Yang family stage, how can we let others steal the limelight?" Kai Yang understood and smiled, "That's what I was thinking." The smiles on the two men's faces converged and almost at the same time increased their speed, shooting off into the distance like a meteor. The two groups of people behind them, no matter who they were, couldn't help feeling shocked. Yang Zhao had broken through to the Immortal Ascension boundary first stage a few days ago, and although he hadn't consolidated his cultivation yet, he had already broken through to the Immortal Ascension boundary. Only a first stage cultivator, yet he was able to display such speed, even faster than Lu Qingyao who had just left. Naturally, everyone was amazed. What was even more surprising was that Yang Kai, a trivial Yuan Qi 8th stage cultivator, wasn't any slower than Yang Zhao. His movement skill was so fast that it was as if he was riding the wind, seemingly effortless. The direct descendants of the Yang family really were all monsters. Everyone secretly shook their heads. As he rushed forward, Yang Zhao couldn't help but feel amazed by Yang Kai's speed. It was because he had used a secret technique that he was able to achieve his current speed, but it also consumed a lot of his Yuan Qi. In other words, he couldn't maintain his current speed for a long time. At most, he could only maintain it for a stick of incense worth of time before he had to stop and rest. Otherwise, he would only run slower and slower. But Ninth Brother didn't seem to be the case. He neither used a secret technique nor an artifact. His speed seemed to be his own, as if he only needed to circulate his Yuan Qi to achieve it. For a time, Yang Zhao couldn't help feeling a bit unconvinced, quickly increasing his speed by another notch. But just as he was half a step away, Yang Kai caught up again and said with a light expression, "Second brother, this is very tiring." Yang Zhao couldn't help but smile bitterly, "Let's catch up with Lu Qingyao first." Yang Kai grinned meaningfully, "The Yang family's limelight is mine, second brother, if you can't do it, you can take a break." As soon as he spoke these words, Yang Kai suddenly felt a wave of heat hit him from the side. Yang Kai's whole body seemed to have transformed into a ball of fire, burning fiercely as he rushed forward, instantly closing the distance between him and Lu Qingyao in front of him, leaving a gust of wind behind him that cut across Yang Zhao's face like a knife. Yang Zhao's eyes narrowed as he immediately shouted, "I am the second brother, how can I not do it?" A halo of light bloomed and wrapped around Yang Zhao's body, pushing his speed to the limit as he followed Lu Qingyao like a shadow. Seemingly aware that there were two people chasing after him, Lu Qingyao couldn't help glancing back, but before he could even focus, a fiery red figure rushed past him, causing his Yuan Qi to fluctuate wildly. Lu Qingyao was surprised and couldn't help muttering, "Such pure Yuan Qi." Chapter 458. Looking at the backs of these two, Lu Qinyao's brow wrinkled slightly, a look of disdain appearing on his face as he slowly shook his head. Relying on external forces isn't enough. Even as he spoke, his speed suddenly increased. Clearly, he was unwilling to fall behind the others. 50 kilometers wasn't a long distance, so after half a stick of incense worth of time, the three arrived at Pijing Lake one after another. Yang Kai landed on the east side, Yang Zhao on the west, and Lu Qingyao in the middle. Only now did Yang Kai have time to take a good look at this legendary first young lord of the central capital. Dressed in blue robes, this young man was neither luxurious nor vulgar. He wasn't very old, only about 26 or 27 years old. His figure was like a sword, not particularly burly, but his body contained a strength that no one could ignore. His expression was indifferent, as if he didn't care about anything, but his eyes revealed an insufferably domineering aura. This kind of arrogance wasn't a deliberate display of arrogance, but rather the natural demeanor of a master who had been at the top of the world for many years. It was as if he was standing high above the clouds, overlooking the common people. He's not a soft persimmon. After a brief moment of observation, Yang Kai understood. Although this young man's cultivation was only at the Immortal Ascension Boundary 3rd stage, he was certainly not someone an ordinary Immortal Ascension Boundary cultivator could compare to. His true strength could only be determined when they fought. Remembering the bold words this young man had said before, Yang Kai smiled lightly. This subtle action attracted Lu Qingyao's attention, his pair of dull but extremely bright eyes suddenly locking onto Yang Kai, his divine sense sweeping towards him unscrupulously. Yang Kai's brow couldn't help wrinkling. His expression was somewhat displeased. Although the other party's actions couldn't pose any threat to him, and could even be said to be harmless, so blatantly using one's divine sense to spy on others was an unspoken taboo. It was very likely to cause unnecessary disputes and fights. Therefore, most people wouldn't do such a thing. Lu Qingyao doing this was simply because he didn't care much about Yang Kai. Sure enough, after his divine sense swept over him, Lu Qingyao no longer paid any attention to him and simply stood there quietly. Extremely conspicuous. No one knew why he had come this time. A group of people had already arrived at the shore of Pijing Lake ahead of time. After seeing Yang Kai and Yang Zhao, this man just nodded lightly before turning his attention to Lu Qingyao. His eyes couldn't help trembling slightly as his yuan qi fluctuated slightly. It was rumored that after Yang Wei returned to the central capital, he had a great battle with Lu Qingyao, but no one knew the final result of that battle. Now, the two sides met again. Naturally, there would be some sparks. Immortal Ascension Boundary 2nd stage, eldest young master's cultivation speed is really fast. Unexpectedly, Lu Qingyao actually took the initiative to greet Yang Wei. Thanks to young Master Lu, I learned a lot from that battle. Yang Wei's expression was indifferent. Lu Qingyao nodded lightly and said in a flat tone, "If you want to comprehend more, you'll need to learn more. This Lu is always waiting for you." Yang Kai and Yang Zhao's expressions suddenly became strange, glancing at each other from a distance, both of them seeing the deep meaning in each other's eyes. These two hadn't exchanged many words, but the meaning behind their words was intriguing. It seemed that the rumors were true. Yang Wei had been defeated in his battle with Lu Qingyao, and it was very likely that he had been defeated miserably. Otherwise, why would Lu Qingyao say such a thing? Lu Qingyao's arrogance didn't make Yang Wei angry. His expression didn't change in the slightest as he nodded. "I will go. I hope young Master Lu won't be too surprised when the time comes." Lu Qingyao slowly shook his head. "I won't be surprised because you're not my opponent." As soon as this sentence came out, the allies behind Yang Wei suddenly felt indignant, all of them glaring angrily at Lu Qingyao. Belittling the Yang family in front of them, Yang Wei's allies naturally couldn't remain indifferent. Yang Wei still didn't show any signs of anger, simply raising his hand to stop the restlessness of the people around him, loudly declaring, "I'm not your opponent now, but that doesn't mean I won't be in the future. Just because I won't be your opponent in the future doesn't mean no one in my Yang family can. Young Master Lu, I may not be the strongest of the Yang family's younger generation, but I know you are the strongest of the Lu family. Your Lu family's limit is yours, but my Yang family's limit is still unknown." Lu Qingyao finally showed a look of interest. "Among the Yang family's younger generation, is there someone stronger than you?" After a pause, his eyes suddenly turned to Yang Zhao. "Is it second young master?" Hey. Yang Zhao couldn't help smiling bitterly. Young Master Lu must be joking. Compared to eldest brother, this little brother is no match for him. You can talk among yourselves, don't count me in. Lu Qingyao chuckled, if it's not second young master, who else could it be? In your Yang family's younger generation, only you and second young master are strong, the others. Slowly shaking his head, Lu Qingyao glanced over at Yang Kai but didn't pay him any mind. Yang Wei, who had always been meticulous and aloof, suddenly burst into laughter. Young Master Lu, since you can't see through him, it means you really aren't his opponent. Lu Qinyao's expression became serious as he stared at Yang Wei, not understanding why he was so sure, but after thinking about it for a while, he couldn't think of anyone in the Yang family who could beat him. If there really was such a person and he couldn't see through him, it meant that this person was truly terrifying. Being able to deceive his eyes was already a big win. Eldest young master, I hope what you said is true. Lu Qingyao quickly said. You just wait and see. Yang Wei nodded gently. Yang Kai had been watching with cold eyes and didn't interrupt, but he felt that Yang Wei's eyes were intentionally or unintentionally glancing towards him a few times. What did eldest brother see? Yang Kai secretly wondered. After waiting for a while, Hua Stars arrived with a large number of people, and at the same time, Yang Zhao's people also gathered around him. When these people arrived, Yang Zhao obviously breathed a sigh of relief and secretly lowered his guard. Just now, he was obviously worried that Yang Wei would take advantage of him being alone to attack him. Although he had a blood warrior guarding him, coming here so hastily was still somewhat dangerous. As the sun rose, more and more people gathered around Pijing Lake. Yang Kang, Yang Shen, and Yang Ying also arrived one after another. After such a long period of preparation and recruitment, it was now possible to distinguish how much support the six brothers had at a glance. The first three had brought more or less the same number of people, and even if there were some differences in strength, it wasn't too obvious, but the three who came later were undoubtedly weaker. Even if these three had a disciple from one of the 8 great families as an ally, their personal charisma and connections were lacking, so it was difficult for them to gather too much support. When they noticed this, the faces of Yang Kang and the others suddenly became ugly. Because even Yang Kai, who everyone thought wouldn't survive the first night, was now ahead of them. If this continued, the situation would only get worse and worse. The three of them all secretly thought that after returning this time, they would have to strengthen the pace of their recruitment. At the very least, they couldn't allow Yang Kai to take the lead. Not only had the 6 Yang family brothers gathered around Pijing Lake, but the other cultivators who had followed them out of War City had also formed a large circle around the lake. However, these people were very self-aware and all stayed 3 kilometers away from Pijing Lake, only watching from a distance. No one was willing to play around with their lives. With so many masters gathered together, once they were caught up in this mess, they would likely die without even knowing how they died. The pair of beautiful sisters who had been in the inn's lobby earlier were also among them, staring in Yang Kai's direction. After not seeing him for a few months, this young man had become a lot stronger. Perhaps it was because of the change in his identity, but now he was more attractive and aggressive than before. One of the 2 sisters' eyes flashed a strange light, her face filled with an enchanting charm as she stared towards Yang Kai's direction. This kind of mood also indirectly affected the other, causing her heart to beat faster. Gritting her teeth, she took a deep breath, her chest heaving up and down as she helplessly smiled. This was really a sin. After cultivating that divine secret art, the 2 sisters had gradually become one, and because of her younger sister's preferences, she had also gradually been influenced. From time to time, she would think of that man's figure, but she was too embarrassed to show it in front of her younger sister, causing her to feel extremely uncomfortable. This time, she had obviously arrived in War City a long time ago, but she couldn't summon up the courage to see him. So she had been hiding in a kilometer away from his mansion, often looking out the window to see if he would ever leave the compound. But after waiting for so long, he still hadn't appeared. Today, she had finally managed to see him, but she had almost missed this opportunity because of her attitude. Thinking about how she didn't mean what she said, the woman couldn't help feeling a bit resentful. She was like her younger sister, her preferences were written all over her face, there was no need to hide them. Hey, aren't you going to help him? The man from before asked with a chuckle. Help what? There's only 3 of us, what kind of role can we play in such a big scene? That's why only women and villains are difficult to deal with. I shouldn't have come with you. The man was depressed. If he had known that such a big scene would occur, he would have brought everyone from the inn with him. Now, there were only 3 people, and all of them were Yuan-Chi cultivators, so they really couldn't play much of a role. Time passed slowly, and everyone was secretly waiting for that batch of artifacts to appear, all of them trying to guess how the Yang family would arrange for 1,000 artifacts to appear here. Yang Kai was also secretly observing his surroundings, using his powerful divine sense to constantly check his surroundings for any signs of movement. Among the crowd of spectators, there were many hidden masters. Perceiving this, Yang Kai was secretly shocked. These masters weren't here to watch the fun, but rather the masters from the 8 great families who were observing the situation. At the bottom of Pajing Lake, there were also some subtle energy fluctuations. These subtle fluctuations were so subtle that even Yang Kai found it difficult to detect them, let alone the others. It seemed that some of the artifacts had been arranged at the bottom of the lake and were only waiting for the right time to appear. Chapter 459. Perceiving this, Yang Kai's mouth curled up slightly, but he didn't make any movements, simply understanding what was going on. The agreed time soon arrived, and everyone gathered around Pajing Lake couldn't help secretly condensing their strength, preparing to act at any time. Their eyes and ears were alert, not only looking for the location where the artifacts would appear, they were also vigilant against the enemy's movements. Snatching artifacts was bound to result in a fight. The Yang family wanted to use this method to stimulate the progress of the inheritance war. Unlike Yang Kai, the other 5 Yang family young lords also cast their eyes towards Pajing Lake from time to time based on their own guesses, listing it as a key area to be guarded, occasionally whispering to the blood warriors guarding nearby to ask for advice. The atmosphere became more and more tense. All of a sudden, a beam of light shot out from the bottom of Pajing Lake, and a strong energy fluctuation burst out. Visible to the naked eye, under the clear lake, bright patterns flashed one after another, converging to form a mysterious formation that covered the entire bottom of the lake. The surrounding world energy suddenly stagnated. It's here! Countless exclamations came from the crowd, all of them craning their necks towards Pajing Lake. Shio shio shio. One after another, rays of light suddenly shot out from the bottom of Pajing Lake and shot straight into the sky. Wrapped in these rays of light were a series of various-looking and colorful artifacts, causing everyone's greed to rise. In an instant, nearly 100 rays of light flew up into the sky, bringing with them droplets of water that poured down like a torrential downpour. Everyone's eyes were like locusts biting into these 100 rays of light, their gazes burning hot. Rushing up to a height of about 300 meters, the 100 rays of light slowly came to a stop. Accompanied by a loud explosion, they scattered in all directions at the speed of a meteor. Young Lord Kai. Wuxing turned to look at Yang Kai and urged anxiously. Yang Kai nodded gently. The next moment, back in the camp. 50% of the people in the camp flew out and grabbed the nearest artifact, each of them using their own methods. In the midst of their laughter and joy, these people grabbed one artifact after another. None of the leaders of the younger generation moved, nor did most of the Immortal Ascension boundary masters. Those who rushed out were all cultivators below the Yuan-Chi boundary and Immortal Ascension boundary 3rd stage. It was not only Yang Kai's situation, but also the other people's situation. Because everyone knew that the grade of the first batch of artifacts that appeared would definitely not be too high, so it was naturally not worth it to lose their footing for these artifacts. Moreover, because this first batch of artifacts had spread out in all directions, it was tantamount to delivering them to their doorstep, so they wouldn't encounter any resistance from their enemies. Naturally, there was no reason for them to rush to snatch them. On the other hand, those who were watching the show all had burning gazes. He continuously swallowed his saliva. Since they had come to watch the show, the strength of these people was definitely not too high. Seeing so many artifacts appear at the same time, it was inevitable that they would be tempted. The six brothers had brought a total of nearly 800 people, even if only half of them were mobilized. 100 artifacts that seemed like a lot were actually in short supply when they were distributed among the masses. None of the secret treasures flew out of Pijing Lake. They were all intercepted by the cultivator halfway through. After the cultivator who had obtained the artifacts returned to the camp, everyone was grinning from ear to ear. The first batch of artifacts was almost evenly divided between the six parties, so no decent battles broke out. The number of artifacts each party obtained was basically the same. They're all Earth-grade low-rank artifacts. Huastars glanced at the artifacts that had been taken back and couldn't help curling his lips, muttering, "The 8 great families are really stingy." Han Shaoqi's expression was indifferent as she brushed her hair behind her ear and said, "Young Lord Hua, you come from a super family, so you don't understand the hardships of a lower-level cultivator. These artifacts may be nothing to you, but for others, they can greatly enhance their strength." Huastars grinned meaningfully, "Beauty, you're being too polite. Although I am from the Hua family, we are also allies. This issue is worth discussing. When this matter is over, let's have a good chat." Han Shaoqi suddenly fell silent and shot a pleading look towards Yang Kai, hoping he would say something to stop Stars from harassing her. Yang Kai's brow wrinkled as he seemed to be lost in thought, his eyes fixed on the mysterious spirit array at the bottom of Pijing Lake. The shining lines still continued to emit a brilliant light, illuminating the bottom of Pijing Lake. Almost at the same time Huastar's voice fell, nearly 100 rays of light shot out from the bottom of the lake. Huastars glanced over at Yang Kai and seeing his expression remain unchanged, he quickly shouted, "Snatch!" The group of people who had just obtained a harvest once again flew away. "Be careful!" Yang Kai suddenly shouted. Everyone was still immersed in the joy of snatching artifacts, so some of them didn't quite understand why he had said this, but after seeing the trajectory of these artifacts, they immediately became vigilant. The second batch of artifacts was not the same as the previous batch. Instead of radiating outwards, they all gathered in a dense cluster above the center of Pijing Lake. Everyone's yuan qi condensed, their strength surging, their martial skills and artifacts blossoming, and the 6 groups instantly rushed together. A great battle broke out instantly. Of the 6 groups, almost 400 people had gathered together, and although 90% of them were yuan qi cultivators, there were also some immortal ascension boundary cultivators. With so many people gathered above the center of Pijing Lake, the scene suddenly became chaotic. Someone with quick reflexes managed to snatch an artifact, but in the next moment he was targeted by 4 or 5 enemies. While the artifact was still warm in his hands, he was struck down by his enemies, his tattered corpse falling from the sky, his blood staining the clear lake water red. Among the crowd of spectators, there was a burst of exclamations and shouts. This kind of melee was what these idle people loved to see. In less than 10 breaths of time, more than 20 people had died one after another, and the number of casualties was still increasing. Almost all the forces had been affected, and every leader of the younger generation had an ugly expression on their faces, gritting their teeth, wishing they could immediately rush up to help. But the 6 Yang family young lords had not issued any orders, so even if they were filled with righteous indignation, they could only bide their time. Everyone knew that this was just an appetizer. At this time, if they were to panic, they would forever be in a passive position. Gradually, the hundreds of artifacts had their owners, but those who held them had become the target of public criticism. Each of the allies protected their own people, fighting and retreating, leaving behind a trail of corpses falling from the sky. Some of the smarter ones, the moment they obtained an artifact, used all their strength to throw it to their own side, then turned around and snatched the artifacts of others. The melee gradually subsided, and the people of the 6 groups gradually distanced themselves from each other, retreating vigilantly. Both of them had their gains and losses. At one point, Pijing Lake's water was dyed red, and nearly 50 corpses were floating on its surface. "Your young family's methods are really brilliant." Dong Dong took a deep breath as he watched the tragedy in front of him and slowly shook his head. For more than a month there had been no fighting, only peace, but because of a single order from the Yang family elder, this calm atmosphere had been broken, forcing the six parties to attack each other. Men die for wealth, birds die for food. Wuxia sneered, the Yang family has already seen through this. It's too tragic, Qin Shu sighed. This was the first time he had participated in this kind of battle since arriving in War City. Seeing that nearly 50 people had died in just half a cup of tea's worth of time, his reflecting moon sect had also suffered losses. Naturally, he couldn't help feeling distressed. It's too simple. Yang Kai's eyes flashed deeply as he suddenly said, simple? Lu Fei-sheng looked at him in amazement, the others also wearing suspicious expressions. Yang Kai didn't respond, simply raising his head and staring in the direction of Yang Wei and Yang Zhao. He found that the two of them were also frowning, seemingly lost in thought. Perceiving Yang Kai's gaze, both Yang Wei and Yang Zhao turned to look at him. Exchanging glances, Yang Kai knew that they also had doubts in their hearts. If the process of snatching artifacts this time was really like this, then it was simply too simple. The Yang family couldn't possibly do such a thing. The Yang family's elders were currently hoping for as many people to die as possible, so how could they allow 1,000 artifacts to appear in such a manner? If things continued like this, as long as the six parties reached a consensus, they could peacefully divide up this batch of artifacts. Of course, this possibility wasn't high. Yang Kai, Yang Wei, and Yang Zhao had all thought of this, so no matter who it was, all three of them were considering what would happen next. The inheritance war was a battle of wits and courage. Blind bravery without strategy was not enough to accomplish anything. Because so many people had died, the atmosphere in the six camps was somewhat tense, each of them coldly glaring at each other, waiting for the next confrontation to settle old and new grudges. The grade of this batch is slightly higher, but it's still not very good. Wuxia examined the artifacts that had been snatched back and shook his head. In the eyes of the Hua family young lord, besides heaven grade and mysterious grade artifacts, all other artifacts were garbage. Even if they were heaven grade, they had to be at least heaven grade mid-rank in order to enter his eyes. The next batch we won't snatch them. Yang Kai suddenly said. What? Wuxia was stunned. Won't snatch them? Yang Kai turned his head and glanced at him. Speak a little louder, they all heard you. Wuxia couldn't help lowering his voice. Why won't we snatch them? If you don't snatch them, it will only benefit others. Not only was Wuxia puzzled, even the 4 girls from 10,000 Flower Palace were suspicious. In the previous confrontation, 10,000 Flower Palace had also lost a female disciple, so all of them were filled with anger and were preparing to take revenge. At this time, Yang Kai suddenly saying he wouldn't snatch these artifacts was naturally a bit difficult for them to understand. Let's wait and see. Yang Kai shook his head. If I'm not mistaken, the next batch of artifacts should be Earth grade top rank. If we don't snatch them, our losses won't be great, but if we do, I'm afraid there will be more variables. Listening to him say this, although everyone still had some doubts, they didn't say anything more. They just secretly felt that Yang Kai was being a bit too cautious. Chapter 460. After waiting for a while, the spirit array at the bottom of the lake lit up again and the crimson water became somewhat gloomy, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. With the previous 2 experiences, everyone knew that the 3rd batch of artifacts was about to appear. Everyone was looking forward to the upcoming battle, each of them searching for a good angle and position, waiting for the show to begin. Yang Kai's people received his order, and although some of them stared at the bottom of the lake with some envy, they didn't have any ideas. On the other hand, Yang Kong and the others were all rubbing their hands, ready to go all out. Asterisk shio shio shio. Asterisk 100 rays of light shot out again and another 100 artifacts appeared. Go, kill whoever dares to snatch them. Yang Kong shouted and the people around him quickly moved out. At the same time, Yang Xin and Yang Ying also issued the same order, each of them wearing a fierce expression, as if they couldn't live under the same sky as everyone here. However, when these 3 parties rushed out, everyone was surprised to find that there were still 2 groups that hadn't moved. On one side was Yang Kai and on the other side was Yang Wei. The oldest and youngest brothers seemed to be satisfied with the harvest they had just obtained. They didn't seem to have any intention of continuing to fight over the treasures. What's going on? Why aren't those two moving? The onlookers shouted. A six-sided melee was only interesting. Now that two parties were missing, it would definitely not be as lively. Don't tell me you're scared? Why would they participate in the inheritance war if they don't have the courage? Hurry up, what are you standing there for, a bunch of stupid pigs? Father here is anxious to death. Such a good opportunity, how can we not grasp it? If it weren't for Father's sect being so bad, he could have taken refuge with a young lord and snatched those artifacts today. Shouting and shouting filled the air, causing Yang Kai to stare at Yang Wei in amazement. It was rare to see Yang Wei smile at him, as if he had seen through his intentions. Come back. The next moment, Yang Zhao's brow furrowed. Suddenly, Yang Kai shouted to his allies. The cultivator, who was excited and ready to show off his strength, had already rushed halfway and was just about to snatch some of the artifacts. Now that they heard Yang Zhao's order, how could they respond? Some people reacted quickly and immediately retreated to Yang Zhao's side, but others were unwilling to give up on this opportunity and with greedy expressions reached out to grab the artifacts in front of them. As if this had caused an incredible reaction, the moment the cultivators snatched the artifacts, a chaotic energy fluctuation suddenly erupted from the center of Pijing Lake. Hong long long xiu xiu xiu. Kacha, flames flickered, lightning and thunder roared, and ice and snow covered the ground. Streaks of astonishing sword light erupted, and sharp and abrupt icicles appeared strangely. Golden threads danced in the air, as sharp as blades, seemingly capable of destroying anything in their path. With 100 artifacts as the center, a vast number of attacks shot out in all directions. Everyone was stunned. The onlookers were still shouting. They didn't know why Yang Kai and Yang Wei didn't do anything. The cultivator who was trying to snatch the artifacts had been on guard against others, so when these attacks broke out, the shouting stopped abruptly and the cultivator was caught off guard. Most of these cultivators were Yuan Qi cultivators and had never expected such a disaster to befall them. To be honest, these attacks were extremely chaotic and each one wasn't very strong, but what made these cultivators vomit blood was that these countless attacks had burst out together. Sand accumulates to a tower, water droplets to a river. How could these Yuan Qi cultivators resist? In the blink of an eye, the cultivator gathered in the center of the lake was swept away, broken limbs and flesh flying everywhere, and blood sprinkling down like rain. Suddenly, a 200-meter wide vacuum appeared, as if it had been swallowed up by an invisible black hole. The cultivator who was a little further away fled in panic, not daring to stay in the same place. He turned his head to look back and saw the miserable scene. His face was full of horror, and his eyes were filled with horror and relief. The scene was quiet, only the splashing sound of the bodies falling into the lake could be heard, which was extremely harsh. How insidious! Yang Kai's eyes were cold as he shouted in a low voice. The sudden burst of energy wasn't the result of the attacks from the cultivators who were trying to snatch the treasures, but rather the result of the hundreds of artifacts. This third batch of artifacts had obviously been tampered with long ago. They were injected with Yuan Qi by the strong cultivators in advance. When someone grabbed them, the energy contained in the artifacts would be activated, catching the cultivator off guard. This was a trap. It was a trap set by the Yang family for the cultivator who was trying to snatch the artifacts this time. The appearance of the first two batches of artifacts had lowered the cultivator's vigilance, and the third batch had killed them. If our people had rushed over just now. Su Xiaoyu's face was a little pale. She had seen people die before. When she was in that isolated world, she had personally killed people. Just now, she had witnessed nearly 50 cultivators' deaths in a battle for artifacts. However, the scene of dozens of people dying in an instant was still terrifying to her. Young Lord Kai, my admiration for you has reached the depths of my soul. Huastar's face twitched. Just now, when Yang Kai had ordered them not to snatch the next batch of artifacts, Huastars had thought he was being too cautious, but now it seemed that he was clearly aware of something. If their people had rushed over just now, they would have suffered heavy losses. Realizing this, how could Huastars not admire him? Not only him, but everyone else also looked at Yang Kai with a look of respect. Eldest young lord, how did you know? On the other side, the Meng family's Meng Shanyi's expression changed slightly as he whispered to Yang Wei. Yang Wei slowly shook his head. I don't know, but as long as ninth brother doesn't move, we won't move. You mean, you just saw Yang Kai? Yang Wei nodded. Ninth brother is cautious by nature, it's all thanks to him, otherwise. Meng Shanyi took a deep breath, no longer daring to underestimate Yang Kai. Turning his head to look at the other Yang family young lords, Yang Zhao's face filled with both relief and fear. Just now, his order had been delivered in time, so his side had only lost 3 cultivators while Yang Kong and the other Yang family young lords' expressions were extremely ugly. Yang Zhao, Yang Shen, and Yang Ying's people had suffered the most. When the third batch of artifacts appeared, each one of them had rushed over faster than the last, so almost all of the attacks from the epicenter had been borne by their people. Each of them had lost more than a dozen people and suffered countless injuries, many of whom were immortal ascension boundary cultivators. Yang Kai and Yang Wei's shrewdness only made them more incompetent. This made them feel a little ashamed and angry. The hundreds of artifacts floating in the sky seemed to have erupted with all their power at that moment, causing their light to dim. When the cultivator who had come to snatch them retreated, all of them fell towards the lake's surface. However, after suffering a big loss just now, no one dared to approach these artifacts rashly. It's time to grab them. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and said lightly. What are you waiting for? Huixing shouted. Immediately, nearly 100 people from Yang Kai's camp rushed out, leaving behind only the leaders of the younger generation and a few immortal ascension boundary cultivators. At the same time, Yang Wei also seemed to have issued an order, seemingly making up his mind to act together with Yang Kai. The cultivator from the other camps flying above Pajing Lake had seen the actions of these two groups, but at this moment, they were still in a state of shock. Without any orders from their young lords, none of them dared to act rashly. Yang Kong and the other young lords struggled and hesitated for a while, not daring to rush into action. Before the artifacts could fall into the lake, they were quickly divided up by the cultivator who rushed up, and no more terrifying and sudden attacks appeared. Surprisingly, the two sides who had reaped a great harvest and returned in triumph didn't break out into a fight. Seeing this scene, Yang Kong and the others felt their intestines turn green with regret. Yang Zhao's expression was also not very good. If he hadn't had so many scruples, he would have been able to get a share of the spoils right now. Young Lord Kai. 54 artifacts. Huixing counted the number and excitedly reported, and all of them are Earth-grade high rank. Yang Kai nodded gently, glancing over at Yang Wei's side and saying, Big brother's people, don't clash with them in the future. Understood. Everyone nodded in unison. Just now, Yang Kai had clearly seen that when they were snatching artifacts, several people on his side had attacked Yang Wei's allies, but those people had only defended and hadn't fought back. It seemed that Yang Wei had given them some kind of order. It was for this reason that he had managed to snatch a few more artifacts. It seemed that his big brother intended to form an alliance with him, otherwise he wouldn't have shown such goodwill. Young Lord Kai, what should we do next? Should we just wait and see? The Hua family young lord asked with a smile. Yang Kai shook his head. They're not fools. That kind of good thing just happened once. The next batch will still be snatched, but what you will face is not only the attacks of the enemy, but also the attacks of the secret treasures. Be careful. If you have defensive martial skills and secret treasures, use them all. Don't die too quickly. Everyone nodded. The reason why the first batch of artifacts had been able to kill so many people was entirely because everyone had been vigilant against the enemy. None of them had expected that these artifacts would be tampered with, so being caught off guard by so many attacks was something even immortal ascension boundary masters couldn't handle. This was only the third batch of artifacts, but there were already hundreds of corpses in Pajing Lake. Once all 1,000 artifacts appeared, how many people would die? Thinking so, whether it was the onlookers or the cultivator involved, all of them couldn't help shuddering. The Yang family and the other 7 great families had really been too vicious this time. Young Lord Kai, what should we do about these artifacts? There are too many of them, Huixing asked with a grin. Anyone could see the pride in his smile. The 5 Duanmu family seniors will take care of them, Yang Kai frowned. The number of artifacts they had snatched would only increase. These artifacts were of different shapes, sizes, and sizes. The small ones were only the size of earrings while the big ones were the size of machetes and javelins. It was definitely unrealistic to carry them on one's body, so there must be someone to take care of them. For this reason, it was inevitable that a group of masters would be dispatched. Yang Kai estimated that everyone else would have to do the same. Chapter 461. 5 Immortal Ascension Boundary Cultivators were assigned to guard the artifacts. Only with this kind of strength and quantity could they deter the enemy. But in this way, the number of masters available would be reduced by 5. However, the appearance of the 3rd batch of artifacts had disrupted the balance between the 6 camps. If Yang Kong and the others didn't handle the current situation well, they would only become more and more passive and their harvest would become less and less. Yang Kai frowned as he thought about how to maximize his advantage. Not long after, the 4th batch of artifacts appeared once again. Nothing new, still appearing from the bottom of the lake, but this time, everyone was more cautious. Although they were all charging forward, they weren't completely defenseless. Not only did they have to guard against the enemy's attacks, but they also had to guard against the energy fluctuations of these artifacts. The slightest carelessness could lead to their souls being destroyed, so how could they afford to be careless? When the cultivator from the 6 camps rushed to the center of the lake, all of them suddenly stopped. No one wanted to be the first to eat the crabs, all of them waiting for the others to act first so that the energy fluctuations of these artifacts could be stimulated. The scene suddenly fell into a stalemate. The artifacts were densely suspended midair while the cultivators stood around vigilantly, sizing each other up. Yang Kai's brow furrowed. Although he had expected this situation to occur, he didn't have a good way to deal with it. Now, whoever acted first would suffer a loss, but continuing this stalemate wasn't a solution. The 5th batch of artifacts would appear soon, so if they didn't eat this batch now and waited until the 5th batch appeared, the situation would only worsen. Yang Kong sneered, "Do you really think I'm a fool? Whoever wants to take it can take it. Let's see if you can take it back." But before he could finish speaking, suddenly, a powerful spiritual energy burst out from the dense array of artifacts. Soul skill. The sudden appearance of this soul skill instantly broke the stalemate. The energy fluctuations of these artifacts were stimulated one after another, and a series of strong and weak attacks suddenly struck the surrounding area, causing everyone to panic. Yang Kai turned his head and glanced over at Lu Qingyao. His brow furrowed. That soul skill just now was unleashed by this person, so why was Lu Qingyao here? No one knew that so far, he had not taken refuge with any of the Yang family young lords. He didn't deliberately make friends with anyone and usually just stayed in War City, but this time, he had quietly run over to Pijing Lake. No one could guess his intentions. It was obviously not a good sign to break this stalemate. Fortunately, this time, everyone was prepared. When those artifacts came crashing down, everyone was vigilant. The grade of these artifacts wasn't too high. Even if the masters poured their true qi into them, they wouldn't be able to display much of their destructive power. Such a scattered attack. It was easy for the cultivator to deal with it if they worked together. After blocking all the attacks, the cultivators once again fell into a scrambling situation. Yang Kai's people received orders and didn't try to embarrass Yang Wei's people. Similarly, they did the same. They also did not attack the people on this side. It was as if the two sides had agreed to coexist peacefully. After the deadlock was broken, the 4th batch of artifacts was divided up. Without giving anyone any time to breathe, the 5th batch of artifacts appeared again. What was surprising though was that this batch of artifacts did not appear from the bottom of the lake. Instead, they appeared out of thin air. Mysterious golden lines flashed in the air, converging into large and small circles. From these golden circles, hundreds of rays of light shot out and scattered towards the ground. The cultivator who had snatched the artifacts didn't even have time to return before the fifth batch of artifacts smashed into them, causing them to become dizzy and disoriented. The attacks launched by these artifacts scattered around aimlessly, even spreading to the crowd of onlookers, causing them to curse loudly. The battle circle suddenly expanded because of the sudden appearance of the fifth batch of artifacts. The chaotic battlefield was no longer confined to Pijing Lake and was now spreading out in all directions. As a last resort, those who had stayed behind in the various camps also joined in to compete for the newly emerged artifacts. For a time, the scene was chaotic and everyone was in danger. The intense battle dazzled those who were watching, causing their blood to boil and wishing they could rush into the battlefield and grab the artifacts themselves. The 6 Yang family young lords also constantly issued new orders to their allies around them, constantly changing their strategies. What was interesting though was that Yang Wei's actions were no different from Yang Kai's, as if they were cast from the same mold. When Yang Kai dispatched new people, so did he. When Yang Kai ordered people to return, so did he. Even when guarding the artifacts he had snatched, he used 5 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. Yang Kai noticed this but didn't say anything. What his big brother wanted to do was his freedom. After a bell-shaped artifact was activated, a burst of unbearable demonic sounds filled the air, causing one's true chi to surge and one's blood to boil. The nearby cultivators managed to resist its attack with great difficulty and were just about to snatch it, but in the midst of the chaotic battle, it was sent flying and fell into the crowd of onlookers. As soon as they saw an artifact fall, the crowd suddenly became excited and all of them used their best skills. Soon, the artifact disappeared, no one knew who had taken it away in the chaos. Cries of discontent filled the air as those who did not manage to grab this artifact all sighed with regret. This was a rare opportunity. So many artifacts had appeared, but only one had been tossed into the crowd. How could they not feel regret when they had not grasped it? While everyone was observing who had taken the artifact, accompanied by a scream, a middle-aged man who seemed to be around 40 years old fell to the ground, bleeding from his 7 orifices. Everyone was shocked. From the middle-aged man's arms, the bell-shaped artifact that had disappeared a moment ago seemed to be attracted by an invisible force and quickly flew out, accelerating in midair before flying back towards Pijing Lake and smashing into the chaotic battlefield. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. Only then did they quickly restrain their thoughts. They knew that this middle-aged man didn't die for no reason, but because he wanted to take the artifact for himself, he had attracted a fatal disaster. Among the crowd, there were definitely eyes watching the movements of the artifacts that flew out. Once someone became greedy, they would immediately be killed. Understanding this, the people who had just tried to snatch the artifact showed a look of relief. Fortunately, they had not obtained the bell-shaped artifact. Otherwise, the one who would have died on the ground would not have been this middle-aged man, but himself. The central capital's Yang family's overbearing and domineering attitude had thoroughly impressed everyone. After the death of a number of bored people who had tried to take advantage of the situation, those who had been watching the fun no longer dared to have any ideas about the artifacts. Because once you made a greedy move, you would be silently killed in the next moment. The chaotic battlefield was still chaotic, and after tasting the appetizers, the next batch of artifacts appeared almost without giving anyone the slightest time to breathe. Often, before one batch of artifacts had been competed for, the next batch would appear, and every time it appeared, it would force people to fight for it. More and more people died, and no matter which camp they belonged to, their losses were not small. The number of people around the Yang family's 6 young lords also became fewer and fewer as time passed. First, half of the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters had been dispatched, and later, even the leading figures of the younger generation, like Huixing, had to be dispatched. However, each of them was protected by an Immortal Ascension Boundary Master. Otherwise, no one would have been able to survive in such a chaotic battlefield. Beside the 6 young lords, in addition to the several Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters who had been left behind to guard the artifacts, there was only one blood warrior. When the 7th batch of artifacts appeared, the battle on Pijing Lake became even more heated, because this batch of artifacts had already reached the Heaven grade. In the 8th batch, most of them were heaven grade. In the 9th batch, all of them were heaven grade. Everyone's eyes were red with greed, everyone around them was an enemy, so without any scruples, they unleashed their yuan qi and spiritual energy, using every means at their disposal to snatch the artifacts back to their camp. Those who were watching the show held their breaths as they watched the situation unfold. The cultivator came and went, snatching an artifact and quickly bringing it back, placing it under the care of the immortal ascension boundary masters in their camp. Everyone's consumption was enormous, but fortunately, Xianxia and the people from Medicine King's Valley had refined a batch of pills that could quickly supplement their yuan qi, so in terms of endurance, Yang Kai's people were better than anyone else. In the middle of the battle, all of them had already taken these pills. Therefore, although their physical and spiritual energy consumption was enormous, they didn't need to worry about the replenishment of their yuan qi. A burst of spiritual energy erupted from Yang Kai's body, containing a cold aura that bloomed in the air. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. A soul-type artifact. Moreover, it was an offensive-type artifact, and more importantly, it was a soul-type artifact that matched Yang Kai's own spiritual energy very well. If he had the help of this soul-type artifact, the power of Yang Kai's soul skills would be greatly improved. Although he really wanted to snatch this artifact himself, he restrained himself and instead shot a glance towards Dong Qinghan, who was nearby. Dong Qinghan was accompanied by the wind and cloud dual guards. Although Dong Qinghan's eyesight wasn't good, that didn't mean the wind and cloud dual guards couldn't recognize this artifact. When the spiritual energy burst out, the wind and cloud dual guards also realized the preciousness of this soul-type artifact. Receiving Yang Kai's signal, Dong Qinghan immediately abandoned his original opponent, turned around, and rushed towards the artifact, the wind and cloud dual guards following closely behind. Just as they arrived at the location of the artifact, before they had time to snatch it, a person appeared in front of them and sneered at Dong Qinghan. "Fatty, you're Yang Kai's ally, right?" The veins on Dong Qinghan's forehead bulged as his expression suddenly became unfriendly. Huastar's calling him Brother Fatty was a subtle and affectionate form of address, but this person in front of him was quite displeasing. Dong Qinghan's eyes flashed a cold light as he glared at the other party, obviously angry. Chapter 462. Dong Qinghan narrowed his eyes at the white-faced young man in front of him and coldly snorted, not bothering to tangle with him. His figure flickered as he tried to bypass this young man. At this time, the most important thing was to snatch the artifact. However, the other party was unwilling to let him go, stepping forward and blocking his path again. Dong Qinghan chuckled, his expression indifferent, but the aura around his body gradually became dangerous. "Since you're Yang Kai's ally, don't even think about passing through here." The young man raised his head slightly, his attitude becoming somewhat arrogant. "I was wondering who it was, so it was the Lu family's young master." Dong Qinghan spat disdainfully. The young man in front of him was none other than Lu Song, who had brought people and supplies to Yang Kai's mansion to seek refuge with Yang Kai. However, this young man's eyesight was quite poor, and after being instigated by Qiu Yimeng, he had angered Yang Kai and was driven out. As a result, he had been beaten by Huaxing and the others. After that incident, Lu Song naturally hated Yang Kai. After recovering from his injuries in War City, he immediately sought out Yang Kai as his backer, determined to drive Yang Kai out of War City. Among all the young lords participating in the Inheritance War, there were 3 who hated Yang Kai very much. One was Xiang Chu of the Xiang family, one was Nanxing of the Nan family, and the last one was Lu Song. These 3, for various reasons, were eager to see Yang Kai die without a burial. When they were fighting for the artifact just now, the cultivator of these 3 families had specifically targeted the people in Yang Kai's camp. Lu Song sneered, "Young Master Dong, I have no grievances with you, but you choosing to help Yang Kai makes me unhappy. This young master is unhappy, so don't think you'll be happy either. I advise you to leave Yang Kai as soon as possible, lest you bring a fatal disaster upon yourself. Go ahead and try." Dong Qinghan knew that Lu Song wanted to delay him here, so he was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. After saying so, his fat body leisurely moved, like a bolt of lightning tearing through the sky. fast, fierce, and straightforward. The wind and cloud dual guard stood guard, not leaving his side. Lu Song's expression turned cold as he shouted, "Want to leave? No way. Stop them." Lu Song was also accompanied by 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage Masters, all of them heading towards the wind and cloud dual guards. Meanwhile, Lu Song's arms suddenly released countless rays of black light. His expression turned ferocious. These black rays of light emitted an aura that made people feel uncomfortable. Traces of cold energy poured into the palm of his hand, and his aura was like a rainbow. In an instant, 2 pitch-black energy balls the size of wash basins appeared in his palms. They were filled with murderous intent. He raised his hand. The 2 energy balls crisscrossed, drawing a zigzag arc through the air as they flew towards Dong Qinghan. Although Lu Song did not have good eyesight. But in any case, he was still the young master of a first-class family. After so many years of cultivation, he would definitely have some tricks up his sleeve. He was at the 7th level of Yuan Qi state. Coupled with this attack from an artifact, it was enough to make many people anxious. Once enveloped by this move, it was as if one had fallen into a quagmire, unable to escape. Dong Qinghan's cultivation was higher than Lu Song's, but with the support of the artifacts of both sides, he was able to easily defeat Lu Song. The gap between their cultivations was negligible. If they really fought, even if Dong Qinghan could win against Lu Song, it would take a lot of time. Right now, the one thing he couldn't afford to waste was time. Looking at the 2 balls of energy that were heading towards him, Fatty Dong took a deep breath. Under this breath, his slightly bloated body shrunk slightly, and he suddenly became spirited and handsome. With a stern expression on his face, he let out a light shout. An explosive sound that was like spring thunder suddenly rang out, and rays of wind blades that were like crescent moons suddenly appeared, greeting the 2 balls of energy. The 2 violent energy balls collided and dissipated. Lu Song's face showed a trace of astonishment, but before he could react, Dong Qinghan had already flashed past him like a bolt of lightning. His not-so-fat body was now wrapped in the power of wind, the mysteries of the wind, increasing his speed to the limit. No one knew that Dong Qinghan cultivated a wind attribute secret art. The first impression that this kind of obese person gave others was that it was difficult for them to move, but Dong Qinghan at this moment was extremely agile, like a monkey flying through a mountain forest. By the time they recovered, it was already too late to stop him. However, after being delayed by Lu Song, the mysterious artifact had now fallen into the hands of another cultivator. Fortunately, this person was only a true element boundary 8th stage young master. Dong Qinghan didn't know which young master he was, but after a series of fierce attacks from Dong Qinghan, he had been knocked unconscious. After realizing that although he was in the same realm as his opponent, he was not his opponent, this cultivator's heart sank and he directly threw out the soul-type artifact. Whether it was intentional or not, the direction he threw it was towards the crowd of onlookers. Lu Song laughed as he turned around and chased after the artifact. Fatty Dong glared hatefully at that person. He didn't have time to continue to tangle with him, and hurriedly retreated. The artifact left a trail of light in the air and gradually fell over the crowd of onlookers. After several previous experiences, how could these onlookers dare to touch this artifact again? They quickly scattered, not even willing to touch it. Only 1 man and 2 women remained in place. A young man in his late 20s and a pair of beautiful twin sisters stared at the artifact flying towards them in amazement, all of them smiling bitterly in their hearts. Judging from the trajectory of this artifact, if it was not intercepted midway, it would definitely fall over the heads of these 3 people, most likely smashing into them. The 3 people hesitated for a moment, but none of them chose to leave like the others. Soon, the artifact fell, and sure enough, right above their heads, one of the beautiful twin sisters reached out and caught it. "Aren't you a little too bold?" the young man shouted, his face suddenly turning pale. Just now, those who had tried to get their hands on the secret treasure had all been silently killed. Even if he didn't dodge, he couldn't catch it. The onlookers also showed a look of regret. These 2 sisters were enchanting and charming, young and beautiful, If they were really killed because of this, it would be too much of a waste of heaven's gifts. This bold action was also noticed by Lu Song and Dong Qinghan. Lu Song, who had arrived first, laughed wildly and stretched out his hand. "Girl, give it to me or you'll die." Dong Qinghan's expression became cold. Although he was anxious, there was nothing he could do. The onlookers didn't care whether you were from the Dong family or the Lu family. In order to avoid being killed, they would naturally choose to give this artifact to the one who arrived first. If this artifact was really taken by Lu Song, it would be very difficult to get it back. Sure enough, the young woman glanced at Lu Song and smiled. Good. Her extremely charming smile had a natural charm to it, causing Lu Song's eyes to widen. At this critical moment, he couldn't help feeling his blood boil. While he was lost in thought, the young woman threw the artifact in her hand, its speed like a meteor, directly passing over Lu Song's head and flying towards Dong Qinghan. Dong Dang Dong, who was anxious, was caught off guard and was almost hit by this flying object. Instinctively reaching out and grabbing the artifact, he couldn't help glancing over at the woman in front of him in astonishment, immediately frowning. He felt like he had seen this young woman somewhere before. Lu Song's face suddenly turned gloomy. His big hands stretched out in the air, but he didn't manage to grab a single hair. This awkward posture made him a little angry, and he shouted, "You're courting death." The yuan qi in his body suddenly surged as he reached out to grab the young woman, his face filled with murderous intent, showing no mercy. However, the young woman's face remained calm as she lightly sent out a palm strike. With a single palm strike, the weather changed. A mysterious energy interweaved into an airtight barrier. Not only did it neutralize Lu Song's killing move, it even sent him tumbling through the air a few times, leaving him in a sorry state. Exclamations rang out as Dong Qinghan was also dumbfounded. No one had expected that this somewhat charming and delicate-looking young woman would actually possess such strength. At such a young age, she was able to repel a first-class family's young lord with a single strike. This kind of skill was not something just anyone could possess. "Umph." The young woman's face showed a look of disdain and disgust as she snorted, turning around and dodging into the crowd, the other young woman and the young man also helplessly following. Lu Song's heart trembled, not even bothering to find fault with this young woman. In a confrontation with Dong Qinghan, even if he was at a disadvantage, he should not have been so powerless, but this young woman was obviously not an ordinary person. She was stronger than both him and Dong Qinghan. His expression complex, Lu Song's face alternated between blue and red as the yuan qi in his body became extremely unstable. In a fight with a first-class family's young lord, his skills were not as good as his opponents, but now he couldn't even compare to a nobody. Naturally, he felt like his face had been damaged. After a moment of hesitation, Lu Song was about to order his subordinates to capture this young woman and torture her, but she had already disappeared, causing Lu Song to feel a sense of powerlessness, as if he had just punched a ball of cotton. "Lu Song, this artifact, this young master kindly accepts it." Dong Qinghan waved the soul-type artifact in his hand, a smug look on his face. The wind and cloud dual guards no longer entangled with the other two masters and immediately returned to Dong Qinghan's side. "Just you wait." Lu Song cursed. Dong Qinghan's expression became serious as he said, "Young Master Lu, I advise you to leave the central capital, otherwise you'll die sooner or later. Those who offend my cousin don't have a good end. Then we'll see whether he dies first or I die first." Lu Song didn't appreciate this kind of advice. Dong Qinghan shook his head slightly, no longer bothering with this young man's nonsense, turning around and flying back to Yang Kai's side. The battle here was only a small corner of the entire battlefield, so the powerful performance of the mysterious woman was only seen by a small number of people, but under the intense focus of the battle, she was quickly forgotten. Only Dong Qinghan's brow furrowed as he flew back, unable to remember where he had seen this pair of twin sisters before. In his memory he seemed to remember them, but when he looked at them, he didn't recognize them, causing Dong Qinghan to feel a little confused. What he was more concerned about was the strength of the woman who had attacked him. She was actually stronger than him. The appearance of the 9th batch of heaven-grade artifacts had stimulated all the cultivators' blood to rush to their heads. Up until now, only a few of these artifacts had been determined, the rest were still being fought over. Once someone obtained an artifact, they would be targeted by countless people and would have no choice but to give it up to divert the enemy's attention. Saving one's life was more important, so these artifacts were changing owners at an incredible speed. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.